Hello there, very good evening and welcome to the news tonight, where we get you the day's top stories from India and across the world. I'm Tracy Shilchi and here are the headlines. Declassified for public viewing at the Kolkata Police Academy, the Netaji files reveal sustained surveillance of his family, intercepted communication hints at sightings after the plane crash. As the US Fed keeps rates unchanged, industry hopes soar of a potential RBI rate cut. Sensex and Nifty record hefty gains. NDA allies declare the first list of candidates for the Bihar Assembly elections. The LJP list has 12 candidates and Manjhi's HAM has 13. And 13 Taliban terrorists are shot dead as they try to storm an Air Force base in Pakistan. 17 people, including an army officer, are killed while offering morning prayers at a mosque. Top story this evening, unchanged US Fed rates boosted the markets on the last day of the week, riding on hopes that the RBI will cut interest rates. The Sensex and Nifty gained substantially. The rupee also posted its biggest daily gain against the dollar in the last 2 years. Take a look.
US Federal Reserve's decision to not raise interest rates led to a strong rally in the markets on Friday. While the Sensex and Nifty gained sharply, the rupee also rallied, lifting the market sentiments. Sensex gained as much as 500 points. Nifty also rose by more than 100 points during intraday trade. Rupee also grew to its strongest position in the last 3 weeks against dollar. One of the major factors that helped markets gain is the hope for a rate cut by the RBI. It was bolstered by the US Federal Reserve's overnight decision to keep its rates unchanged.
The Federal Open Market Committee reaffirmed the current 0 to 0.25% target range for the federal funds rate. Since the committee met in July, the pace of job gains has been solid. The unemployment rate has declined, and overall labor market conditions have continued to improve.
A hike in US could have sparked further volatility in the Indian stock markets. The central bank is set for a bi-monthly monetary policy at the end of the month. It's under immense pressure from the government and the industry to cut interest rates to boost growth. But RBI chief says the key to economic growth is a low inflation.
The key tasks are to keep inflation low, not just today, but well into the future, so that we get moderate nominal interest rates.
RBI's rate cut hopes brightened after retail inflation eased marginally last month. Continuing its deflationary trend for the past 10 months, wholesale inflation also plunged to a historic low in August. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, for more on this, we're joined by Shuba Mohapatra, the Deputy Editor at the Indian Express, joining us in studio this evening. Shuba Moh, all indications are that perhaps we will be seeing, that the RBI rate cut is going to happen on the 29th of September?
That's still some way off. We would like to see more data, but definitely it creates easier position for the RBI to decide on which way to decide on. But there's one flip thing which comes from the Fed Reserve, which is that once this decision has been taken, money from FII, which was actually expected to be moving out, is now going to come back again. So to that extent, asset price inflation could actually stoke up. So RBI might decide that, we could let things be comfortable for a bit more.
That is, in fact, what Raghuram Rajan himself was saying today while he was addressing an audience, that let us not always rely on monetary policy alone. We should also be looking at the long-term impact of the economy, the long-term indications. Make sure that inflation continues to stay low. So the RBI governor is definitely more cautious, as far as this rate cuts are concerned, and also looking at the economy at large.
Right. I mean, overall, if you look at what he said in the last meeting, that on balance, the inflationary pressures should be seen to be easing. Now, that is important. So that means that even the pressure from WPI should not be feeding into a further CPI inflation. So essentially, we have got a handle on inflation to some extent, but whether this is something which is sustainable, which will move down, is something which the RBI would like to know before they really go in for a rate cut.
Global finance majors, they're of course saying that there are receding external risks, which are, of course, paving the way for the RBI to do that rate cut. They're also saying that domestic developments are favorable. Also, like you're mentioning, of course, CPI inflation is well, under the RBI's under 6% mandate. So for the moment, at least, all the indications are, and, we wouldn't be wrong if people are hopeful that there is going to be that rate cut.
Yeah, but again, RBI decision is not based on what has already happened, but on the trends that are sort of, looking out. Now, like going by today's market, for instance, and if that sort of tends to show that there is going to be a surge of money coming into the Indian market, and that is something that creates a more difficult situation for RBI. So essentially, the domestic situation, as you said, is right. It is softer. The prices are low. If the trends show that they will be trending downwards, then RBI might decide that, yes, despite the asset price inflation, there is a room for a rate cut.
RBI has, of course, lowered the benchmark rate 3 times, isn't it, by 75 basis points so far this year. But now that you've mentioned the markets, Shuba Moy, very quickly, if you could give us an indication, at least on the overall look of the markets, and any kind of indication that comes in, whether it's the global markets, it's the Chinese economy, we see so much of volatility that happens. Today, of course, just on the indications of that US Fed rate, unchanged rates, we again see the markets swinging so high. So is volatility now the normal that we're going to be seeing for at least a few months?
That's a very interesting point, because there's the same thing which the Minister of State for Finance, Mr. Jaishankar, said yesterday, that volatility in the market is actually something which is quite difficult, because if that stays like this, then the cost of capital goes up, and which is definitely not good for the economy. Now, one of the things that could possibly tone down volatility over the medium term would be the interest of pension, would be the entry of pension funds. And they are coming in, and as Mr. Sinha said, their equity exposure could even go up to 15%. So that definitely would stem the volatility. But on the short term, yes. Also, if you look at what has happened today in the US market and the European market, for quite some years, whenever the Fed has loosened the interest rate, the markets have actually gone up. This is the first time, after several years actually, you'd notice that the European markets and the US market has actually gone down. So, which is an indicator of possibly a major change that is happening in the overall world market in terms of how they're looking at, the impact of quantitative easing. Which I'm basically saying that they're sort of saying that the markets will now be more attuned to what's happening in the real economy than rather than what's happening within the financial market. So that's a way to read it. Whether on the basis of that, the Indian markets, would it tend to sort of go down after the initial upsurge?
Yes.
I would think that probably for some more days, when the feel-good factor of the fact that if I have money is going to come in, that would probably keep the markets a bit high.
All right. We'll leave it there for now. Thanks so much, Shuba Mohapatra, for joining us with those details on this story. And now on to more news. And the West Bengal government declassified 64 files related to legendary freedom fighter Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose today. Hidden in government and police lockers for years, the files are on display at the Kolkata Police Museum. They will be allowed for public viewing from Monday. Here's a peek into what's been revealed so far from those files.
West Bengal Chief Minister had announced a government's initiative last week. On Friday, 55 files from Kolkata Police and 9 from the State Police were declassified, with hopes that mystery surrounding Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's final days will be cleared.
You must know the truth, and truth must come out. Let the good sense prevail among all of us. Why we should be worried and why we should hurry the things? Let it come out. Today or tomorrow it will come out.
The files, which are kept on display at the Kolkata Police Museum, will be thrown open to people from Monday. The files reveal the details on the doubts that continued regarding Netaji's death in various quarters. One letter written by a Swiss journalist to Netaji's brother Subhash Chandra Bose in 1949 questioned the theory that he died during a plane crash 3 years ago. The files reveal sustained surveillance of Netaji's family and the activities of the Netaji Research Bureau in Kolkata. On 20th August 1965, a weekly secret survey of the Netaji Research Bureau by state intelligence officers intercepted communication between Netaji's nephew, Sisir Kumar Bose, and Japanese author Tatsuo Hayashida. Bose claimed he had information through government sources that reject the Saigon plane crash theory. The state government and Netaji's family now hopes the center to declassify other files on the freedom fighter.
Today it has been established that certain icons of the independence era look like villains. It should be completely exposed. Who are the villains of independent India?
This much we can assure you that no one has taken a more serious view of the need to find out the truth. The Prime Minister will take a final call on the basis of the national interest.
The declassification of files related to Netaji has been a key demand not only from the family but from several political entities as well. However, the centre has clarified that declassification of such files could compromise India's foreign relations. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
NDA allies, the LJP and the HAM, declared their first list of candidates for the Bihar Assembly polls. While the LJP list contains 12 names, including that of party chief Ramvilas Paswan's brother and nephew, the HAM has announced 13 names. Part of the third front in Bihar, meanwhile, the NCP leaders also held a meeting to decide its candidates. They are expected to make an announcement tomorrow.
Days after sulking over the NDA's seat-sharing deal, the Lok Janshakti Party has declared its first list of candidates for the Bihar Assembly elections. Declaring the first list, the party's parliamentary board chairman and Ramvilas Paswan's son, Chirag Paswan, admitted there was a consensus with NDA allies only on 29 of the 40 seats. Talks are underway to finalize the remaining 11 seats, which the party will contest. The seats for which LJP declared its candidates are spread over different phases.
कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग को ईमानदारी से इस बात को कबूलना होगा कि जब आप एक गठबंधन में होते हैं और एक ऐसा मजबूत गठबंधन जहां पर एक बहुत बड़ी राष्ट्रीय पार्टी है जो कि हमारे गठबंधन में प्रमुख साथी की भूमिका में है भारतीय जनता पार्टी, जहां पर दो और महत्वपूर्ण पार्टियां हमारे साथ हैं, राष्ट्रीय लोक समता पार्टी, मांझी जी की पार्टी। तो जब आप गठबंधन में होते हैं कहीं ना कहीं फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी होनी बहुत ज़रूरी है। कुछ स्तर पर आपको कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ करने, एक बड़े उद्देश्य के लिए, एक बड़े लक्ष्य के लिए आपको अगर कुछ स्तर पर कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ करने पड़े वो करने पड़ते हैं।
Meanwhile, the Hindustani Awam Morcha also announced its first list of candidates. It contains 13 names, including that of former Bihar Chief Minister and HAM Chief Jitan Ram Manjhi.
जनता साथ देगी हम लोगों को ताकि हम लोगों की एनडीए की सरकार बनेगी। 23 माने में भाजपा के हमारे साथी और नेतृत्व ज्यादा हमसे ज्यादा सोचते हैं और उस लाइन पर जो हमारे लिए ईयर मार्क किए हैं उसको हम मानते हैं।
The LJP had earlier voiced concerns that HAM and RLSP had been given a better deal in terms of seat sharing, which was disproportionate to their political strength in the state. But the concerns seem to have been addressed for now. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The Election Commission has rejected a plea to ban Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Mann Ki Baat radio program during the Bihar polls. Congress and its alliance partners in the state had alleged that it could be used to directly influence the outcome of the elections, thus violating the Model Code of Conduct. The Election Commission had earlier said that it cannot put a blanket ban on the program. However, it is now assured of action if parts of the program are found to be in violation of the Model Code of Conduct. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi visited his home constituency Varanasi today. The visit comes after 2 previous trips were cancelled for various reasons. Modi interacted with a few rickshaw pullers, telling them that his government's first aim was to make the poor self-sufficient in the use of technology. He also emphasized on skill development, telling people of Varanasi that this was the best way to equip children in the fight against poverty. Modi distributed 101 e-rickshaws and 501 cycle rickshaws under the Jan Dhan Yojana scheme. He also went on to mock his political rivals for questioning this scheme.
हम करीब पिछले 40-50 साल से गरीबी हटाओ इस बात को सुनते आए अब तक जितने प्रयोग हुए हैं उन प्रयोगों से जितनी मात्रा में परिणाम चाहिए था वो देश को मिला नहीं है.
With a quick break here, still ahead, India and Laos inked 2 MOUs as Vice President Mohammad Hamid Ansari wrapped up his 4-day visit.
Meat, sale and slaughter debate. Supreme Court agrees with stay on ban. Says bans can't be forced down people's throats. Is this the final word on the issue? Watch the big picture at 9:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back to the news tonight. Now, a 40-year-old Indian fisherman was killed in firing allegedly by Pakistan's Maritime Security Agency off the Gujarat coast on Friday morning. The incident took place 100 nautical miles off the Okha coast. The dead fisherman was in fact identified as Iqbal Bhatti. The Indian Coast Guard has sent 2 ships to the spot to look into the incident. At present, the boat is under escort by the Coast Guard vessel, and both of the vessels are heading towards Okha, where it is expected to arrive tonight. The Indian Coast Guard announced that they will conduct a joint interrogation on Pakistan firing at the Indian boats once the vessel reaches.
Coast Guard Station Okha was informed by the owner that their vessel, Ms. Prem Raj, was while fishing in the area, was fired upon by some vessel. Then on receipt of the information, we immediately diverted our Coast Guard ship, ICS Visit, which is carrying out IMBL patrol in that area, and then to go and investigate.
And with that, let's get you some more national news updates in Nationwide. 4 militants were killed today as the army foiled an infiltration bid along the LOC in the Gurez sector in North Kashmir's Bandipora district. The militants were intercepted while trying to sneak into the valley from across the border. 4 rifles have been recovered along with the militants' bodies from the site of the encounter. 2 people were injured today after Pakistani Rangers fired at the Indian border posts in Poonch district of Jammu and Kashmir. A villager and a soldier are being treated at nearby hospitals after Pakistan resorted to heavy firing and mortar shelling early this morning. The villagers living along the LOC in stay indoors without basic supplies. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has accused municipal corporations of siphoning off funds as he inspected 2 hospitals in East Delhi for their dengue preparedness. Over 2,000 people are infected in the national capital. Kejriwal also inaugurated 200 beds at the Rajiv Gandhi Super Speciality Hospital. The Supreme Court today agreed to hear on Monday the plea on which it had stayed the operation of recent changes in the Haryana election laws. The Haryana government had told the court that if it did not vacate the stay on the law, then the polls that start from the 4th of October would be cancelled. The amended laws fixes matriculation as the essential qualification for general candidates contesting the Panchayat polls. Now, Vice President Mohammad Hamid Ansari has wrapped up his 4-day trip to Cambodia and Laos, People's Democratic Republic. On the last day of his important visit, MOUs were signed between India and Laos, focusing mainly on strengthening economic and commercial ties. Neelu Vyas gets us this report.
A grand welcome for Vice President Mohammad Hamid Ansari at the Presidential Palace in Vientiane, the capital of Laos. This is the first visit to the country by an Indian Vice President. Giving a push to India's Act East policy, Vice President Ansari emphasized the importance of developing trade, political and economic ties between India and Laos.
Look, East policy is not sufficient. It has to be an Act East policy. And as part of that endeavor, we are actively, consciously building our linkages, political linkages, economic linkages, trade linkages, above all retaining and reviving cultural linkages which go back a very long time.
The two sides held delegation-level talks followed by the signing of two important memoranda of understanding. One agreement relates to air connectivity, while the second one was about infrastructure-related quick impact projects. At present, the volume of trade between Laos and India is to the tune of just $89.2 million, which is not reflective of India's potential.
The Vice President conveyed that Laos had geared itself well economically to take into account the coming into force of the ASEAN Economic Community by the end of this year, and that they would be assuming the chairmanship of ASEAN in 2016. India was fully supportive of this.
The Vice President also called upon the President and Prime Minister of Laos, assuring them of India's commitment to developing bilateral ties. One of the few last engagements of the Vice President was a visit to the Soldiers' Monument, Phathat Luang.
Hamid Ansari's visit to Cambodia and Laos has reaffirmed India's commitment to its Act East policy. People on both sides of the borders are now hopeful that commercial and economic ties will boost, resulting in India's greater influence in the ASEAN community. With video journalist Anirban, this is Neelu Vyas reporting from VNTN, Lao PDR for RSTV.
Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar arrived in Nepal's capital Kathmandu today. Jaishankar is on a two-day visit. He was sent as Prime Minister Narendra Modi's special envoy to hold talks with the Nepalese leadership. The Foreign Secretary's visit comes at a time when Nepal is about to promulgate a new constitution. President Ram Baran Yadav is in fact slated to do that at a special function on Sunday. Now, in one of the deadliest attacks in Pakistan, Taliban fighters stormed an Air Force base, killing at least 42 people, including 13 militants. 16 of the victims were offering their morning prayers at a mosque inside the compound. This is one of the bloodiest attacks since 150 children were massacred at Peshawar's Army Public School in December last year.
Taliban gunmen stormed into Badaber military air base near Peshawar in Pakistan, killing at least 29 and injuring several others. 16 of them were killed as they offered their morning prayers at mosque inside the airbase. The army was quick to dispatch a rapid response force to the scene. They claimed that all 13 of the attackers were killed, but according to Taliban, only one of their fighters have died. Army is still unclear about the number of terrorists involved.
7 से 10 तक तादाद बताई जा रही है और ये भी इतलात है कि तकरीबन सारे के सारे ही मारे गए हैं, लेकिन उसके बावजूद सर्च ऑपरेशन जारी है.
All the injured were rushed to the hospital where Pakistan Army Chief General Raheel Sharif visited them. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif condemned the attack, promising to root out terrorists from the country.
तक हमारे पास जो है 6 जख्मी लाए गए हैं, जिसमें एक छोटा बच्चा भी शामिल है. इसमें 2 की कंडीशन थोड़ी सी सीरियस है, बाकी माशाल्लाह स्टेबल है.
The attack on the Badaber airbase is the first on a military target since a Pakistan Navy ship was attacked in Karachi in September 2014. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Free borders in Southeast Europe are under threat. Slovenia has suspended rail connections with Croatia after around 150 refugees arrived on train. Croatia has now joined Hungary in closing most of its road borders with Serbia.
Chaos on the borders of Serbia and Croatia. Thousands of migrants were left in cold rain as the roads to border crossings were shut down. Travelling on foot towards Germany, scuffles were witnessed at bus and train stations as migrants waited for tickets.
We are waiting from this morning from 9 o'clock till right now. We're waiting for the bus. Unfortunately, there was 6 buses and there is no more buses until yet.
After Hungary fenced off its borders, pressure is building up on Croatia, Slovenia and Romania. Over the last 2 days, 13,000 people entered Croatia alone. The crossing on the main road linking Belgrade and Zagreb is the only one open. Slovenia too suspended rail connections with Croatia, returning a train full of 150 migrants.
Mit tesz Horvátország? A bevándorlók ellátása, tisztességes ellátása és teljes körű regisztrálása helyett a bevándorlókat Magyarország és Szlovénia felé tovább küldik. Ahelyett
French President François Hollande met his Italian counterpart Matteo Renzi to discuss the European Union's response to the flood of refugees.
L'Europa è nata per abbattere I muri, non per costruirli.
In occasione del Consiglio europeo di mercoledì ci sarà senz'altro la possibilità di ribadire il messaggio.
C'est de créer ces centres hotspots là où nos frontières sont forcément concernées, en Italie, en Grèce, en Hongrie, que ces centres puissent avoir tous les moyens pour agir avec le respect de la dignité des personnes, mais aussi de la responsabilité qui est la nôtre.
The European Union has called for an emergency summit on 23rd September to overcome the divide on the refugee issue. On Monday, ministers failed to agree on a mandatory quota system to spread the burden of this year's huge migrant influx. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now further international news updates. Here's Global Buzz. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe defeated the censure bill against him in the upper house of parliament. The government has been pushing through contentious defense legislation that could let its troops fight overseas for the first time since World War II, despite public protests and delaying tactics by the opposition. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has called for a high-level commission to examine U.S. defense spending. She told a New Hampshire audience that the nation needs a very thorough debate on what the U.S. needs in defense and how is it going to pay for it. The death toll in the Chilean earthquake has risen to 10. A massive 8.4 magnitude earthquake shook the country, along with a dozen aftershocks causing the closure of airports and subways in Santiago City. The government has closed most schools and authorities are making efforts to monitor geological activities. Nigerian terror group Boko Haram's insurgency in Nigeria and surrounding West African countries has forced 1.4 million children to flee their homes. The new figures were released by the United Nations Children's Fund. The report said that the terror group uprooted 500,000 children in the past 5 months alone. And finally, let's give you all the action from the world of sports in Sports Beat. India leveled the Davis Cup World Group playoff with Czech Republic after the singles matches on first day. Lucas Rosol defeated Yuki Bhambri in straight sets in the opening game to give the Czech Republic a 1-0 lead. However, Somdev Devvarman brought India back by defeating Jiri Vessel 7-6, 6-4, 6-3 to make it 1-1. Doubles pair of Rohan Bopanna and Leander Paes will be playing tomorrow. The condition of BCCI President Jagmohan Dalmia is stable after an angiography last night. The 75-year-old was rushed to hospital last evening after he complained of chest pains. Dalmia is being closely monitored now in the critical care unit of the hospital. The Supreme Court will hear a BCCI petition seeking clarification on whether former President N. Srinivasan can attend its meetings. The Apex Court said that it will hear the application in the near future but did not fix a date for the hearing. BCCI has asked the Supreme Court on the 12th of September if Srinivasan could attend its meetings as president of the Tamil Nadu Cricket Association. FIFA Secretary-General Jerome Valchka has been put on leave and released from his duties till further notice on allegations involving resale of World Cup tickets. The Frenchman has denied the allegations though. Football's world governing body has been engulfed by claims of widespread corruption since this May after 7 top executives were arrested in Zurich. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight. Thanks so much for joining us and have a good weekend.